Warlock, today I have a build that's not going to be my regular usual ability spam builds, but this build is going to be more synergized around gunplay. And we're going to be using a lot of different weapons in this build because a lot of different weapons will synergize well with the exotic of choice today. The exotic of choice will be Matter of Battle Harmony, and that's going to increase our weapon damage any single time that we do have our full super. So do not activate your super in this build and only use your super when necessary, because once you have your super fully charged up, you will gain a 25% damage buff. And we're going to be combining that 25% damage buff with the only other mod that stacks with it, which will be Radiant. And Radiant is going to give us another 25% damage buff. So at any given point, you should have a 50% damage buff to all your solar weapons that you have in your kit. And that's going to be the build we're going to be rocking today. We're going to use a lot of solar weapons to put out high amounts of damage. And we're going to combine that with our solar 3.0 subclass. So we're going to gain infinite health regen. And we're going to tank a lot of damage in this build. Let me show you guys exactly what I'm using to set this build up right. And you're able to just slay out, tank a lot of damage, and use your guns instead of using my regular ability energy spam builds. Let's jump straight into the exotic of choice. Will be Mantle of Battle Harmony. Mantle of Battle Harmony reads that takedowns of weapons that have a damage type matching your subclass will grant you super energy. So you're able to get your super very quickly in this build. I got my super down to 1 minute and 30 seconds just by slaying out a solar weapon. And while your super energy is full, you instead gain a temporary boost to your weapon damage, matching your subclass elements. So Mantle of Battle Harmony works with all of your subclasses, but today we're going to be focusing on our solar subclass in general, since the solar subclass will give us a lot of health regen in particular. Now, usually I would rock this with, solar surges and other weapon damage buffs, but the Mantle of Battle Harmony does not stack with solar surge or any kind of surges in general. So the only other buff you can stack this with will be Radiant. And once we have our full super, we will gain a 25% damage buff to all your solar weapons in your kit. So think of using solar weapons in this kit. Don't use any other kind of weapon archetypes in this build. Only stick to solar weapons when you are running this build today. So since we have the exotic of choice, Mantle of Battle Harmony, we're going to pick it up with Prometheus Lens, because Prometheus Lens does a lot of damage overall. It scorches targets and it ignites targets, and once you do kill enemies with this weapon, you will gain a portion of your ammo. So you're gonna have infinite ammo with the Prometheus Lens, and that's why I chose to run it with the Mantle of Battle Harmony today. In our Solar 3.0 subclass, the main things we want to have in our Solar 3.0 subclass is infinite health regen and a way to pump out a lot of damage. The way we're gonna be doing that is by using our two aspects, Icarus Dash, which is going to grant us the ability to do Icarus Dash in the air, and 2 fragment slots, and we're going to have Touch of Flame. Touch of Flame is going to enhance our grenade and make sure that we have infinite health regen. The way we're going to enhance our grenade, and the grenade we will be using, will be our healing grenade, and our healing grenade will give us restoration ×2. That's how you see the buff on the bottom left of my screen always stay active with restoration ×2. The other abilities we have in this kit and our super are completely up to you. We're rocking Well of Radiant since we do not want to pop our super at all, and it has a shorter cooldown duration than Daybreak. The next thing we do have is Phoenix Dive, so we can just gain a little bit of health regen whenever we need it. We're combining that with just our regular Burst Glide, and I choose to pick up Celestial Fire over Incinerator Snap because I like the range of Celestial Fire. Now, these fragments are going to cement this build and make sure we're able to slay out and keep our buffs active at all times. The first fragment we do have is Ember of Solace. Ember of Solace is going to extend the duration of Radiant and Restoration in this build. The next thing we have is Ember of Empyrean, so our solar weapon and final blows will also extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant. So Ember of Empyrean means when you get a kill with your Prometheus Lens, it's going to extend that duration. And Ember of Solace is just going to make sure that the length of our duration is increased. Now, the next thing we need to do is proc those abilities. We're going to be procking Radiant by using Ember of Torches, and Ember of Torches is going to make sure every single time we hit an enemy with our Celestial Fire, we will be granted Radiant, and that's the second buff in this build to gain us a nice 25% damage buff every single time we have Ember of Torches. And the last thing we do have is Ember of Mercy. So when we pick up a Fire Sprite, we also gain restoration, but the main important thing is when we revive an ally, we also gain restoration. So in a very team-based setting, so think of a raid or think of the dungeon, every time you revive your allies, you're going to be granted restoration without having to use a grenade. Now, that is it for our Solo 3.0 subclass. We want to be able to spam all of our abilities, but because we are not really spamming all of our abilities, because once we proc them, we will keep them active, the only ability we need to spam in this build will be our melee. So we're going to have 2 different active mods to make sure we're able to keep up our melee and keep up our ammo economy, since we're using a special weapon as our primary weapon. On our helmet, we have special ammo finder and heavy ammo finder, so we're able to keep our ammo economy good. And we're going to be using harmonic siphon, and because we are on a Solo 3.0 subclass and harmonic siphon ties to our subclass, we have solar siphon. On our gauntlets, we're going to be using one of the few active mods. We're going to use melee kickstarter, so once we do activate our melee, it's going to expend all of our armor charge stacks. We're combining that with impact induction, so every time we cause damage to our melee attack, it's going to reduce our grenade and focus and strike. This is going to grant us class ability energy every time we do damage with our melee attack as well. On our chest piece, it's just going to be our regular damage resist mods. There are not too many mods you want to run in your chest piece other than damage resistance. You need to be able to tank a lot of damage with this build and just stay alive. On our feet, we're going to be using stacks on stacks and invigoration. Stacks on stacks is going to make sure when we pick up an overpower, it's going to grant us 2 armor stacks instead of 1. Invigoration is going to make sure when we pick up an overpower, it will grant us melee energy, since our melee is the only thing we want to be able to spam in this build. The last thing we do have is just another recuperation, so we're able to just infinitely regen our health. And to wrap up this build on our Warlock bond, we will be using special finisher, so we are able to gain special ammo every single time we finish an enemy. This just makes sure that we do not run out of ammo with our Prometheus lens or any special weapon we choose to rock in this build. This is very essential for the build. Next we have Reaper. Reaper is going to make sure that we're able to spawn Herbs of Power if you want to swap weapons and not use a solo weapon in our kinetic slot. And that wraps up for the build. Build into 100 resilience and 100 discipline, and always prioritize resilience over discipline. And that wraps up for the build. If you guys made it this far, drop a comment saying photo finish, as photo finish is my favorite shader in the game. It's the shader I like to rock on most of my builds. And please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.